I give the CIA a total credit for sponsoring and initiating the entire consciousness movement, counterculture events of the 1960s.
Welcome back to Rise to Liberty podcast. We have, or I guess I have, a great show for you tonight. Let's see here. But first, before we get too far into this, I do want to just bring a couple of things up real quick. Head on over to risetoliberty.store to go support the show and everything I have going on. There's some pretty cool merch over there right now. Just dropped a newer t-shirt design and mug design. Also just launched the 20-ounce stainless steel water bottle that you can get. So go check that out. Or head on over to risetoliberty.com/coffee, and you can head on over and go support the show financially, which always helps. Cash is king when it comes to all of this. You can go make a one-time donation or a recurring monthly donation. I could use all the help I could get. Running this show isn't exactly cheap. Also doing all this research, I definitely need as much caffeine as possible. Or you can head on over to ko-fi.com/risetoliberty and do the same thing, a one-time donation or a monthly recurring donation. Either way, both options are open. With that, I would also like to bring up our show's sponsor, which is Nadu Shave Co. This is absolutely the best razor, hands down. You will not regret it. It helps out the show. It helps out them. This is a COVID mandate refusing company. This is where the company came from. The owner was in the military, refused the COVID mandates, and started this project. And I have absolutely been the happiest with their products. I just can't say enough about them. So head on over to nadeaushaveco.com, use promo code RISE15 and get 15% off. I mean, that's the best deal out of all of the shows that he sponsors, I believe. So go show him some love. You will not regret it. And let them know that we sent you over there. Okay, so today's show, we will be going over part 2 of Dave McGowan's Laurel Canyon blog. For anyone that has never read, there it is, Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon. We will be covering his blog version that he wrote before he released the book. But there are a couple of things I want to get to before we do that. So let's see here. First and foremost, happy Killdozer Day to everybody. Maybe we should do a story about Marvin Heemeyer one of these days, talking about Killdozer. It is an interesting story. There's plenty of YouTube videos, though, for anyone who hasn't or doesn't know the story, nonetheless. So Marvin Heemeyer's last written message was, quote, "I was always willing to be reasonable until I had to be unreasonable. Sometimes reasonable men must do unreasonable things." Perfect quote. So for any real quick, there was a bunch of problems that he kept having in his town, somewhere in Colorado. I can't remember the name of the town. There was a bunch of corruption. He had finally had enough. He welded up this massive bulldozer and ran through the town, attacking all of those who had wronged him. Very interesting story. So happy Killdozer Day to all of you. Let's see. One thing I feel like I definitely have to touch on is this whole Trump's big beautiful bill thing. um, I mean, this is just insane. So within Trump's big beautiful bill, um, there's a section in there that actually bans all 50 states from interfering with AI on the state level. So government AI um, prevents all 50 states from doing anything to interacting, regulating, um, or taking legislation against AI for 10 full years. This centralizes control at the federal level and integrates AI systems into key federal agencies. So let's see. Part 2, Artificial Intelligence and Information Technology Moderation. Section 43201, Artificial Intelligence and Information Technology Modernization Initiative. Let's see. Section A, Appropriation of Funds. There is hereby appointed to the Department of Commerce for fiscal year 2025 out of any funds in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated $500 million to remain available until September 30th, 2034 to modernize and secure federal information technology systems through the development of commercial artificial intelligence, the development of automation technologies, and the replacement of antiquated business systems in accordance with subsection B. Subsection B, authorized uses. The Secretary of Commerce shall use the funds appropriated under subsection A for the following. 1. To replace or modernize within the Department of Commerce legacy business systems with state-of-the-art commercial artificial intelligence systems and automated decision systems. 2. To facilitate within the Department of Commerce the adoption of artificial intelligent models that increase operational efficiency and service delivery. 3. To improve within the Department of Commerce the cybersecurity posture of federal information technology systems through modernized architecture, automated threat detection, and integrated artificial intelligence solutions. C. Memorandum. 1. In general, except as provided in paragraph 2, no state or political subdivision thereof may enforce during the 10-year period beginning on the date of enactment of this act any law or regulation of the state or a political subdivision thereof limiting, restricting, or otherwise regulating artificial intelligence models, artificial intelligence systems, or automated decision systems entered into interstate commerce. So this is basically allowing Silicon Valley tech bros to really just go all out and do whatever they want, experiment on anyone and everyone. Let's see, just pulling something else up real quick. So this allows them to experiment on all of us without any oversight. I mean, this is just insane. Let's see here. I'm just pulling up. Let's see, where is this? So this definitely comes in into play with the whole Palantir database, which is a whole thing in and of itself. Palantir is a CIA cutout, basically. Let's see here. So Palantir, it's basically a data company. They will their database, which is tied into this AI system, which now has or will have no regulation for 10 solid years. The database will include things like tax filings, student debt, social security, bank accounts, medical claims, immigration status, criminal history, pretty much everything you can think of. Now, pair that with what we already know with Real ID. I mean, that just kind of gives you an idea of what is coming down the pike. It is absolutely the most terrifying thing I could possibly think of. And this means that this is the very start of the social credit score system. So your social credit score will be given to you by this system. They'll be able to rate you as a person, give you a score based upon all of these other elements, like such as your credit score, your social security. You know, I imagine how much you pay in taxes, if you receive any sort of federal or state help. All of these things are going to form your social credit score. Your social credit score will determine if you're able to travel, if you're able to have a bank account, if you are able to go to the grocery store, pretty much everything. This is a complete and utter takeover. Now, let's just give this system just unfettered access, no control, no oversight. People can't sue, people can't audit or do anything for 10 whole years. That is absolutely insane. That is absolutely insane. Now, I did want to bring this up as well. This is Jason Bassler of the Free Thought Project. Make sure and go check him out. Go follow him if you don't. He's very awesome follow, friend of the show. This is also something to keep in mind regarding this AI platform and database. Excuse me. Let's see. So Jason says, remember, folks, especially on this platform, most of the people arguing that state power can be wielded for good are actually CIA PSYOP bots. So every single one of those devices that are plugged in is a cell phone. And as you can see, it goes all the way back. So these are just a whole bunch of cell phones lined up on, you know, they're tilted on their side. They're all cell phones. Each individual cell phone is a separate, say, Twitter account or Instagram account. And they are being ran through a computer, an AI model. And so when you start arguing with people online, especially when they seem completely unreasonable, and not to say that unreasonable people don't exist. However, odds are you're probably arguing with a computer. So this is just something to keep in mind. But all of these cell phones are all fake people. They don't exist. And they are all out there pushing state-run propaganda. So this is just something to keep in mind. I can't even begin to say how many are actually in there, but as you can see, there's just racks upon racks upon racks that go deep within wherever the hell this is. And most likely this is a private company. Now, think that it's not illegal to run one of these bot farms. In fact, it's pretty unregulated as far as I understand. On top of that, you have multiple governments doing this, but you also have private industry doing this. People will push products, and it's just really interesting. It makes you wonder, are the people that I'm interacting with even real to begin with? It really makes you wonder, don't it? So I did just want to bring up a couple of those things because of this AI stuff. I mean, if you exist on the internet at all, if you hop on the internet, any service you use has AI integrated into it almost. Very few things have I come across that doesn't have some sort of an AI assistant or option to where you can um, basically use an AI model. So it's literally everywhere. The government's coming in and utilizing AI, and now they're passing a law which was hidden within a spending bill, which is going to increase the debt of our nation about another 30 trillion, um, which we're already sitting at 36 trillion. In fact, while we're talking about the national debt, let's just pull this up. Let's just go check this out real quick, shall we? I think we shall. Let's see. So here's the national debt in real time. So $36.9 trillion, going up rapidly. For anyone who's interested, this is usdebtclock.org. Go check it out. It's really interesting. It's terrifying and also just kind of depressing when you watch this just climb. And what's interesting, it doesn't stop either. There is no stopping it. So, but this goes through everything. This is an incredibly valuable website. Goes through all the federal tax revenue, breaks it down per citizen, total state revenue, local revenue, state debt per citizen. And this was something when I was younger, I never understood how they said, each American is born with this much debt or whatever. Like that never made sense to me until I saw it broken down like this. So, based upon our population, debt per U.S. citizen is $107,838. Now that actually only matters when we're talking about taxpayers. So debt per taxpayer is $323,051. To make this make a bit more sense, we're actually going to have to do a show probably about the fiat banking, which I don't know why I haven't done. I mean, that is a massive building block in all of this. Yes, it relates over to mind control. It relates over to the economy, all of these different things. And it plays a massive part in all of this. I mean, it's the foundation of our entire system. It's our money, right? So we really should go through the Federal Reserve and fractional reserve banking, full reserve banking, all of these different things to go break it down. And in fact, the Mises Institute just sent me a stack of books. In fact, hold on one sec. Let's see if I can grab them. Okay. Yeah, so I do think we're going to do a show all about money. Probably a couple of shows. I'll figure out a way. I'll go through and break it down. Super simple. It is an incredibly complicated story, so that's going to be quite the task. So it might not happen for a few weeks. However, when we do, like I said, the Mises Institute just sent me a bunch of books. What Has Government Done to Our Money by Murray Rothbard. And I have read parts of this before. It's a very interesting book. It's very short, but I do have a couple of copies, and maybe we'll do a giveaway. I'll figure out some way to when we do the Federal Reserve show, I'll do some sort of contest or something to make it fun for everyone, and we'll give away a couple of books. I think we'll do that. So yeah, in the next couple of weeks, I'll try to get something together so we can go over the Federal Reserve, fractional reserve banking, and the way that people think about money, which is a conspiracy in and of itself, right there. One of the largest true crime stories in human history I could possibly think of. I mean, them basically stealing all future wealth. Well, we're sitting here talking. Well, I'm talking. You guys are watching or listening, and I mean, I've just kept this number up just to kind of show. It just keeps going. It just keeps going, and it doesn't stop. Now, this big, beautiful spending bill that Trump is passing, or it will passing, or that will end up passing. Something he said he wasn't going to do. They were supposed to be cutting spending, not increasing spending. Thomas Massey has said that it will most likely increase the debt about 30 trillion, and that's probably right. That's probably right. But on top of that, we now have this relationship with Trump and Palantir, Peter Thiel, which that's basically just the CIA. All of these guys, they're all tied into the CIA, and they're trying to introduce a database on all citizens, a AI database that has no oversight by anybody, including Congress. And once the bill passes, there's absolutely not a damn thing that anyone can do about it for the next 10 years. With as fast as AI and technology itself is advancing, I mean, it's going to be a completely different world from the beginning to the end of 10 years. And this is the largest encroachment on our liberties, the largest growth of tyranny since the Patriot Act itself. And this should anger all citizens. Everyone should be terrified about this and be up in arms. Not terrified in the sense that, we should be so scared that we're frozen and don't do anything. We should be terrified in the sense of the possibilities of the abuse. And that energy should be put into doing something about this and freeing ourselves, bracing for impact on what's about to come, because these numbers, this is absolutely unsustainable. There's no way that that anything good is going to come from this. And the bubble has got to pop eventually. The best time to prepare is yesterday. Second best time is today. And get some sort of cushion, because when this bubble pops, it's going to be bad. It is going to be very, very bad. So, on that happy note, let's see here. I did want to bring up a video I found. I thought this was really interesting. This was a really cool schizo clip. Viewers of my channel should be very familiar with schizo clips. But I thought this was just absolutely wonderful, honestly. Which is why I wanted to share it. Here we go. So this is from Blunts for Jesus, or his @ is assuming it's a he, at 2 Stone to Go Home. Thought that was pretty funny. But the operation that never really ended, all about Operation Gladio. Um, I thought this was just absolutely killer, so we were going to play it real quick.
One such program by the U.S. was put in place during the Cold War called Operation Gladio, the aim of which was to have paramilitary organizations stay behind in the Eastern Bloc to continue the destabilization of regional powers. It's a decades-long operation that consisted of false flag terror attacks, death, the funding of ultra-nationalist groups to foment terrorism. And although the program was finally acknowledged in 2006 and is said to be long over, some allege that it never really ended. Instead, this clandestine operation simply morphed to fit the needs of the war on terror. Let's talk about the transition into Gladio B. You said that there's evidence showing that this is actually still happening today, and it's actually morphed into something else. So what is that, and what evidence is there to back that up?
In the mid-1990s, Operation Gladio started to shift from that funding of paramilitaries and ultranationalist groups in Turkey specifically towards an operation more like what we saw in Afghanistan in the 1980s, where the U.S. specifically was funding and helping and training and arming the Mujahideen in their fight against the Soviets in Afghanistan. And this became the model for what's known as Gladio B. Gladio B is the term that Isabel Edmonds indicates is the actual FBI file that they have on this, on the information on this in the FBI. But basically, this is the cooperation of NATO and U.S., including high-ranking U.S. State Department officials and others, with Islamic terrorists, basically, in the perpetuation of the strategy of tension.
Oh, hey, boomer moment. Okay. Anyways, what I was saying, let's get into what the show was supposed to be about. This is part 2 of our Laurel Canyon series. We are going through and reading Dave McGowan's blog version of Weird Scenes. I already showed it, even though you couldn't hear me. Let's see here. Interesting. So basically, so this show is actually part 2. As you can see on the screen, or for those listening, we have already done part 1. We will be going through. I think it is incredibly important. This shows a massive part of American history that, I mean, amongst the circles, that I run with, it's talked about. But for the average person, this isn't really known. I think this is incredibly important to talk about these things because this affects so much in American history. Not to mention the story is incredible. It's just like, step back for a second, take off the tinfoil hat. Like, it's just a great story. But I do think that it's incredibly important. And once again, even though other people have talked about it, I think it's something that needs to keep being talked about. These ideas, the story needs to be driven home. So that's why we are going to be talking about it today. Anyways, go check out part 1 of Laurel Canyon. We'll also be going through all of them. Also later on gonna try and add a little bit more to it. Might have to do some of this off of YouTube and maybe just go to Rumble so we can, play some of the music, play clips of the movies and things like that. I would like it to be a bit more interesting and interactive with people. Anyways, enough rambling. Let's get into part 2. So this is Inside the Laurel Canyon, the strange but mostly true story of Laurel Canyon and the birth of the hippie generation, part 2, by Dave McGowan, May 13th, 2008. Let me get a drink of water real quick. He was great. He was unreal. Really, really good. He had this kind of music that nobody else was doing. I thought he really had something crazy, something great. He was a living poet. Today's first trivia question. Both of the above statements were made on separate occasions by a famous Laurel Canyon musician of the 1960s era. Both quotes were offered up in praise of another Laurel Canyon musician. Award yourself 5 points for correctly identifying the person who made the remarks, and 5 for identifying who the statement refers to. The answers are at the end of this post. So as far as who made the comments, I'm not sure. I'm taking a guess. The comments were made about Jim Morrison. I almost guarantee the comments were made about Jim Morrison. Easy. Now, as far as who made the comments, that's I'm not really sure. Anybody watching, let me know in the chat. Leave a comment. We'll pull them up, and we'll see by the end of it who made these comments. So I'll read them one more time. He was great. He was unusual. Really, really good. And the second one, he had this kind of music that nobody else was doing. I thought he really had something crazy, something great. He was like a living poet. Who said it? In the first chapter of this saga, we met a sampling of some of the most successful and influential rock music superstars who emerged from Laurel Canyon during its glory days. But these were, alas, more than just musicians and singers and songwriters who had come together in the canyon. They were destined to become the spokesperson or the spokesman and de facto leaders of a generation of disaffected youth. As Carl Gottlieb noted in David Crosby's co-written autobiography, the unprecedented mass appeal of the new rock and roll gave the singers a voice in public affairs. That, of course, makes it all the more curious that these icons were, to an overwhelming degree, the sons and daughters of military/intelligence complex, and the scions of families that have wielded vast wealth and power in this country for a very long time. When I when I recently presented a friend with a truncated summary of the information contained in the first installment of this series, said friend opted to play the devil's advocate by suggesting that there was nothing necessarily nefarious in the fact that so many of these icons of a past generation hailed from military/intelligence families. Perhaps, he suggested, they had embarked on their chosen careers as a form of rebellion against the values of their parents. And that, I suppose, might be true in a couple of cases. But what we But what are we to conclude from the fact that such an astonishing number of these folks, along with their girlfriends, wives, managers, etc., hail from a similar background? Are we to believe that the only kids from that era who had musical talent were the sons and daughters of Navy admirals, chemical warfare engineers, and Air Force intelligence officers? Or are they just the only ones who were signed to lucrative contracts and relentlessly promoted by their labels and the media? If these artists were rebelling against, rather than subtly promoting, the values of their parents, then why didn't they ever speak out against the folks they were allegedly rebelling against? Why did Jim Morrison never denounce or even mention his father's key role in escalating one of America's bloodiest illegal wars? And why did Frank Zappa never pen a song exploring the horrors of chemical warfare, though he did pen a charming little ditty entitled "The Ritual Dance of the Child Killer," and which Mama's and Papa's song was it that laid waste to the values and actions of John Phillips' parents and in-laws? And in which interview exactly did David Crosby and Stephen Stills disown the family values that they were raised with? In the coming weeks, we will take a much closer look at these folks, as well as many of their contemporaries, as we endeavor to determine how and why the youth counterculture of the 1960s was given birth. According to virtually all the accounts that I have read, this was essentially a spontaneous, organic response to the war in Southeast Asia and to the prevailing social conditions of the time. Conspiracy theorists, of course, have frequently opined that what began as a legitimate movement was at some point co-opted and undermined by intelligence operations such as COINTELPRO. Entire books, for example, have been written examining how presumably virtuous musical artists were subjected to FBI harassment and or whacked by the CIA. Here we will, as you have no doubt already ascertained, take a decidedly different approach. The question that we will be tackling is a more deeply troubling one. What if the musicians themselves and various other leaders and founders of the movement were every bit as part of the intelligence community as the people who were supposedly harassing them? What if, in other words, the entire youth culture of the 1960s was created not as a grassroots challenge to the status quo, but as a cynical exercise in discrediting and marginalizing the budding anti-war movement and creating a fake opposition that could be easily controlled and led astray? And what if the harassment these folks were subjected to was largely a stage-managed show designed to give the leaders of the counterculture some much-needed street cred? What if, in reality, they were pretty much all playing on the same team? Seems pretty crazy when you think about it, doesn't it? I mean, how could the entire 60s counterculture revolution be created? I mean, quite easily, actually. It's not as hard as you would think to come in and control a narrative or a counter narrative. Now, it is decidedly a lot more difficult to create one, to not only create one, but to create and then control one, especially one with such a lasting impact on American history, on true crime, on everything. I mean, the 1960s, whether people like that part of American history or know anything about it, we are all still affected by it. So it is incredible to think how much of an impact that this time period has had even today, which is partially why we're covering it. I think even though others have covered it, talked it to death, I haven't. And I want my turn. I think more of us need to talk about this. And as we progress in this story, we will also be adding to it. We'll also go down some of the roads that other researchers recently have gone down. We'll expand on what Dave McGowan left us. I should probably mention here that, contrary to popular opinion, the hippie or flower child movement was not synonymous with the anti-war movement. As time passed, there was, to be sure, a fair amount of overlap between the two movements. And the mass media outlets, as is their wont, did their very best to portray the flower power generation as the torchbearers of the anti-war movement. Because, after all, a ragtag band of unwashed, drug-fueled, long-haired, sporting flowers and peace symbols was far easier to marginalize than, say, a bunch of respected college professors and their concerned students. The reality, however, is that the anti-war movement was already well underway before the first aspiring hippie arrived in Laurel Canyon. The first Vietnam War teach-in was held on the campus of the University of Michigan in March 1965. The first organized walk-on Washington occurred just a few weeks later. Needless to say, there were no hippies in attendance at either event. The problem would soon be rectified, and the anti-war crowd, those who were serious about ending the bloodshed in Vietnam, anyway, would be none too appreciative. That's one thing, one of the first major, I guess, misunderstandings we really have to break down. Those who are unfamiliar with this, the hippies, the flower children, the LSD heads, the deadheads, all of these types of people, and the anti-war movement really were two separate entities. The anti-war movement started, from what I understand, the anti-war movement was also already underway. I mean, exactly when it started in relation to the hippies or the flower children, I do believe the anti-war movement came first, and the hippies came after, because obviously the anti-war movement needed to gain ground and start being a problem, a thorn in the sides of the powers that be before, they tried to figure out a way to discredit them. So that's my understanding. Is that the anti-war movement came first, the hippies came after. But it seems as though the hippies and the flower children, first of all, didn't get along, even though Dave McGowan does point out there was some overlap. Obviously, a lot of these flower children were definitely going to adopt the anti-war sentiment, but that doesn't mean that they were part of the anti-war movement. We see this a lot today in movements that are happening, or any anti-authoritarian movement, any freedom-based movement. This happens a lot. People get grouped together, whether they like it or not, and that's in favor of the intelligence community, the FBI, CIA, NSA, DHS, whatever, any 3-letter or 4-letter agency. But the one thing is the Flower Children and the anti-war movement were, especially initially, two separate entities. They were not the same. So every hippie being anti-war is also not true. Not every hippie was protesting. Lots of hippies just like the drugs. It's just kind of how it is. So that is one misconception. Not all hippies were anti-war. Most of the anti-war, especially in the beginning, were not hippies. They were not long hairs. They were not freaks. They were not, using drugs, any of this. Part 2 continues. As Barry Miles has written in his coffee table book, Hippie, there were some hippies involved in anti-war protests, particularly after the police riot in Chicago in 1968, when so many people got injured. But on the whole, the movement activists looked on hippies with disdain. Peter Coyote, narrating the documentary Hippies on the History Channel, added that some of the left even theorized that the hippies were the end result of a plot by the CIA to neutralize the anti-war movement with LSD, turning potential protesters into self-absorbed navel-gazers. That's a pretty cool description. Let's see. N exacerbated paraded. Abby Hoffman once described the scene as he remembered it thusly, quote, "There were all these activists, Berkeley radicals, White Panthers, all trying to stop the war and change things for the better. Then we got flooded with all these flower children who were into drugs and sex. Where the hell did the hippies come from?" Interesting question. As it turns out, they came, initially at least, from the rather private, isolated, largely self-contained neighborhood in Los Angeles known as Laurel Canyon. In contrast to the other canyons slicing through the Hollywood Hills, Laurel Canyon has its own market, the semi-famous Laurel Canyon Country Store, its own deli and cleaners, its own elementary school, the Wonderland School, its own boutique shops and salons, and in more recent years, its own celebrity rehab facility named, as you may have guessed, the Wonderland Center. During its heyday, the canyon even had its own management company, Lookout Management, to handle the talent. At one point, it even had its own newspaper. One other thing that I should add here, before getting too far along with this series, is that this has not been an easy line of research for me to conduct, primarily because I have been, for as long as I can remember, a huge fan of the 1960s music and culture. Though I was born in 1960 and therefore didn't come of age, so to speak, until the 1970s, I have always felt as though I was ripped off by being denied the opportunity to experience firsthand the era that I was so obviously meant to inhabit. During my high school and college years, while my peers were mostly into faceless corporate rock, think Journey, Foreigner, Kansas, Boston, etc., and perhaps worse yet, the twin horrors of new wave and disco music, I was faithfully spinning my Hendrix, Joplin, and Doors albums, which I still have, or rather my eldest daughter still has, in the original vinyl versions, while my color organ, remember those, competed with my blacklight and strobe light. I grew my hair long until well past the age when it should have been sheared off. I may have even strung beads across the doorway to my room. but it is possible that I am confusing my life with that of Greg Brady, who, as we all remember, once converted his dad's home office into a groovy bachelor pad. Anyway, as I have probably mentioned previously on more than one occasion, one of the most difficult aspects of this journey that I have been on for the last decade or so has been watching so many of my former idols and mentors fall by the wayside, as it became increasingly clear to me that people who I once thought were the good guys, in reality, something entirely different than what they appear to be. The first to fall, naturally enough, were the establishment figures, the politicians who I once, quite foolishly, looked up to as people who were fighting the good fight within the confines of the system to bring about real change. Though it now pains me to admit this, there was a time when I admired the likes of EGATs, George McGovern, and Jimmy Carter, as well as, oops, excuse me for a moment, I seem to have just thrown up in my mouth a little bit, California Poles, Tom Hayden, and Jerry Brown. I even had high hopes, oh so many years ago, for, am I really admitting this in print? Aspiring first man, Bill Clinton. Hey, JC, good to see you. Glad you're here. Hope you're doing well. So one quick interjection. Oh, it looks like having a little problem. Connection is unstable. Let me run a quick test on my internet. Make sure we get back to some good internet here. Well, it looks like it's kind of fixing itself. Okay. Anyways, one thing I do kind of want to bring up is that I really enjoyed not only how he writes, but I enjoyed that he brings this part up, that he, just like so many of us, and like so many other people, at one point, we lived in the delusion that is fed to us. We thought that the counterculture was an actual counterculture. We believed in some politician at some point. We believed, the lies that were fed to us. And I do think it's interesting, him just bringing it up, that as he gets older and realizes what these people actually were. And I do enjoy the fact, the admittance that this was a difficult bit of research for him. I mean, I personally have had moments in research doing the same thing, where, learning that some people aren't as great as you thought they were, that they weren't who their public persona was. And so I totally empathize with this. And I just really enjoy how he brought it out. And I think it's really helpful for people who are just at the beginning of learning this. Like so many people, I have actually just had my mother read Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon, and this was her generation. This is, she's a little bit younger than the musicians, but nonetheless, this is when she grew up. This is her music. And so, I do think it's kind of important for people who are exposed to these ideas and this truth, who are just entering into it, to be able to have someone like Dave McGowan be able to explain, how difficult it was for him to come to terms with it, but him admitting that he ultimately did. Also, it's just a good reminder, I think, no matter um, how red-pilled you are to what the truth is, how much you realize what's going on. I think it's just a good reminder. Back to the article. Since I mentioned Governor Moonbeam Brown, by the way, I must now digress just a little bit. And we all know how I hate it when that happens. But as luck would have it, Jerry Brown was, curiously enough, a longtime resident of a little place called Laurel Canyon. As readers of Program to Kill may recall, Brown lived on Wonderland Avenue, not too many doors down from 8763 Wonderland Avenue, the site of the infamous Four on the Floor murders, regarded by grizzled LA homicide detectives as the most bloody and brutal multiple murder in the city's very bloody history. If you get a chance, by the way, check out Wonderland with Val Kilmer the next time it shows up on your cable listings. It is, by Hollywood standards, a reasonably accurate retelling of the crime, and a pretty decent film as well. I'm actually going to have to look that up real quick. And, well, I'm going to pull it up on another tab and look into it later. I want to see if it's streaming somewhere. And then, let's see here. Oh, come on. Okay. As it turns out, you see, the most bloody mass murder in LA's history took place in one of the city's most serene, pastoral, and exclusive neighborhoods. And strangely enough, the case usually cited as the runner-up for the title of the bloodiest crime scene, the murder of Stephen Parent, Sharon Tate, Jay Sebring, Wojtek Forkowski, and Abigail Folger at 10050 Cielo Drive in Benedict Canyon, just a couple miles away, or just a couple miles to the west of Laurel Canyon, has deep ties to the Laurel Canyon scene as well, which we will definitely be getting into all of that as we progress through this. As previously mentioned, victims Folger and Forkowski lived in Laurel Canyon at 2774 Woodstock Road, in a rented home right across the road from a favored gathering spot for Laurel Canyon royalty. Many of the regular visitors to Cass Elliott's home, including a number of shady drug dealers, were also regular visitors to the Folger-Forkowski home. Forkowski's son, by the way, was stabbed to death on June 6, 1999, 30 years after his father met the same fate. Victims Jay Sebring, acclaimed hair salon, sat right at the mouth of Laurel Canyon, just below the Sunset Strip. And it was Sebring, alas, who was credited with sculpting Jim Morrison's famous mane. It was pretty good hair. One of the investors in his Sebring International business venture was a Laurel Canyon luminary, who I may have mentioned previously, Mr. John Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas. Sharon Tate was also well known in Laurel Canyon, where she was a frequent visitor to the homes of friends like John Phillips, Cass Elliott, and Abby Folger. And when she wasn't in Laurel Canyon, many of the canyon regulars, both famous and infamous, made themselves at home in her place on Cielo Drive. Canyonite Van Dyke Parks, for example, dropped by for a visit on the day on the very day of the murders. And Danny Daughtry, the other Papa in the Mamas and the Papas, has claimed that he and John Phillips were invited to Cielo Drive home on the night of the murders, but as luck would have it, they never made it over. Similarly, Chuck Negron of Three Dog Night, a regular visitor of the Wonderland Death House, had set up a drug buy on the night of the mass murder, but he fell asleep and never made it over. Along with the victims, the alleged killers also lived in and or were very much a part of the Laurel Canyon scene. Bobby Cupid Bousselet, for example, lived in a Laurel Canyon apartment during the early months of 1969. Charles Tex Watson, who allegedly led the death squad responsible for the carnage at Cielo Drive, lived for a time in a home on, guess where? Wonderland Avenue. During that time, curiously enough, Watson co-owned and worked in a wig shop in Beverly Hills, Crown Wig Creations, Ltd. That was located near the mouth of Benedict Canyon. Meanwhile, one of Jay Sebring's primary claims to fame was his expertise in crafting men's hair pieces, which he did in his shop near the mouth of Laurel Canyon. A typical day then in the late 1960s would find Watson crafting hair pieces for upscale Hollywood clientele near Benedict Canyon, and then returning home to Laurel Canyon while Sebring crafted hair pieces for an upscale Hollywood clientele near Laurel Canyon, and then returned home to Benedict Canyon. And then one crazy day, as we all know, one of them became a killer and the other his victim. But there's nothing odd about that, I suppose, so let's move on. Oh, wait a minute. We can't move on just yet, as I forgot to mention that Sebring's Benedict Canyon home at 9820 Easton Drive was a rather infamous Hollywood death house that had once belonged to Jean Harlow and Paul Byrne. The mismatched pair were wed on July 2nd, 1932, when Harlow, already a huge star of the silver screen, was just 21 years old. Just 2 months later, on September 5th, Byrne caught a bullet to the head in his wife's bedroom. He was found sprawled naked in a pool of his own blood, his corpse drenched with his wife's perfume. Upon discovering the body, Byrne's butler promptly contacted MGM's head of security, Whitney Hendry, who in turn contacted Louis B. Mayer and Irving Thalberg. All three men descended upon the Benedict Canyon home to, tidy up a bit. A couple hours later, they decided to contact the LAPD. This scene would be repeated years later when Sebring's friends would rush to the home to clean up before officers investigating the Tate murders arrived. Byrne's death was, needless to say, written off as a suicide, a very common thing that happens amongst all of these people. His newlywed wife, strangely enough, was never called as a witness at the inquest. Byrne's other wife, which is to say his common law wife, Dorothy Millette, I'm not sure, repeatedly boarded a Sacramento riverboat on September 6, 1932, the day after Paul's death. She was next seen floating belly up in the Sacramento River. Her death would be expected, was also ruled a suicide. Less than 5 years later, Harlow herself dropped dead at the ripe old age of 26. At the time, authorities opted not to divulge the cause of death, though it was later claimed that bad kidneys had done her in. During her brief stay on this planet, Harlow had cycled through 3 turbulent marriages and yet still found time to serve as godmother to Bugsy Siegel's daughter, Millicent. What an odd name. Though Burns was the most famous body to be hauled out of the Easton Drive home in a coroner's bag, it certainly wasn't the only one. Another man had reportedly committed suicide there as well in some unspecified fashion. Yet another unfortunate soul drowned in the home's pool. And a maid was once found swinging from the end of a rope. Her death, needless to say, was ruled a suicide as well. That's a lot of blood for one home to absorb. But the house's morbid history, though a turnoff to many prospective residents, was reportedly exactly what attracted Jay Sebring to the property. His murder would further darken the black cloud hanging over the home. As Laurel Canyon chronicler Michael Walker has noted, LA's 2 most notorious mass murders, one in August of 1969 and the other in July of 1981, both involving 5 victims, though at Wonderland, one of the 5 miraculously survived, provided rather morbid bookends for Laurel Canyon's glory years. Walker, though, like others who have chronicled that time and place, treats these brutal crimes as though they were unfortunate aberrations. The reality, however, is that the 9 bodies recovered from Cielo Drive and Wonderland Avenue constitute just the tip of a very large and very bloody iceberg. To partially illustrate that point, here is today's second trivia question. What do Diane Linkletter, daughter of famed entertainer Art Linkletter, legendary comedian Lenny Bruce, screen idol Saul Mino, starlet Inger Stevens, and silent film star Roman Navarro all have in common? If you answered that all were found dead in their homes, either in or at the mouth of Laurel Canyon in the decade between 1966 and 1976, then award yourself 5 points. If you added that all 5 were, in all likelihood, murdered in their Laurel Canyon homes, then add 5 bonus points. Only 2 of them, of course, are officially listed as murder victims. Mano, who was stabbed to death outside his home at 8563 Holloway Drive on February 12, 1976, and Navarro, who was killed near the county store in a decidedly ritualistic fashion on the eve of Halloween 1968. Inger Stevens' death in her home at 8000 Woodrow Wilson Drive on April 30th, 1970, while Springa's not, I don't know. Anyone let me know, anyone watching this, let me know how that's pronounced. Some occult holiday on the occult calendar. Her death was, of course, officially a suicide, though why she opted to propel herself through a decorative glass screen as part of that suicide remains a mystery. Perhaps she wanted to leave behind a gruesome crime scene, and simple overdoses can be so, bloodless and boring. Diane Linkletter, as we all know, sailed out the window of her Shoreman Towers apartment because in her LSD-addled state, she thought she could fly, or some such thing. We know this because Art himself told us that it was so, and because the story was retold throughout the 1970s as a cautionary tale about the dangers of drugs. What we weren't told, however, is that Diane, born curiously enough on Halloween Day 1948, wasn't alone when she plunged 6 stories to her death on the morning of October 4th, 1969. Ayu Contre, she was, man, I'm just terrible with the French. She was with a gent by the name of Edward Durston, who, in completely unexpected turn of events, accompanied actress Carol Wayne to Mexico some 15 years later. Carol, alas, perhaps weighed down by her enormous breasts, managed to drown in barely 1 foot of water, while Mr. Durston promptly disappeared. As would be expected, he was never questioned by authorities about Wayne's curious death. After all, it is quite common for the same guy to be the sole witness to 2 separate accidental deaths. Happens all the time. Art also neglected to mention, by the way, that just weeks before Diane's curious death, another member of the Linkletter clan, Art's son-in-law, John Zweier, caught a bullet to the head in the backyard of his Hollywood Hills home. But that, of course, was an unconnected suicide, so don't go thinking otherwise. I'm not even going to discuss here the circumstances of Bruce's death from acute morphine poisoning on August 3rd, 1966, because, to be perfectly honest, I don't know too many people who don't already assume that Lenny was whacked. I'll just note here that his funeral was well attended by the Laurel Canyon rock icons, and control over his unreleased material fell into the hands of a guy by the name of Frank Zappa, and another rather unsavory character named Phil Spector, whose crack team of studio musicians, dubbed the Wrecking Crew, were the actual musicians playing on many studio recordings by such bands as the Monkees, the Byrds, the Beach Boys, and the Mamas and the Papas. The Wrecking Crew, the band who created the sound of the 60s. Who knew? So, as for the trivia question, the person being praised, of course, was our old friend Chuck Manson. So, I thought it was Jim Barson, but it was Charles Manson. And the guy singing his praises, Mr. Neil Young. Mr. Neil Young. So let's run to the top and remind ourselves of what it was now that we know who it was about and who said it. So Neil Young said this about Charles Manson. He was great. He was unreal. Really, really good. He had this kind of music that nobody else was doing. I thought he really had something crazy, something great. He was like a living poet. Isn't that great? Isn't that just great? Neil Young and his opinion about Charles Manson. Now, I do want to bring this up while it is the topic. This is one thing that always confused me and pisses me off about people who talk about this time period. The way that Charles Manson is portrayed and everything. Everyone portrays him like he was like this outcast that nobody knew, that he was just some strange guy that appeared out of nowhere. That is just the furthest thing from the truth. I mean, all of these people knew him. It wasn't just, you know, anybody who's ever watched damn it, a Manson documentary, the way, or like Red Helter Skelter, or, you know, anyone that goes with the, I guess, the normie story about all of this, it's just kind of interesting the way that they portray it as, you know, oh, he met Dennis Wilson and then he met just a couple of people, but nobody really liked him, and, you know, nobody wanted him around or anything. That's just bullshit. Everyone loved the dude. Everyone knew him. He ran in this circle. He visited many homes, was with many people. I mean, it's a lie to say that Charles Manson wasn't known by any of these people. Once again, Neil Young was singing his praise. Why would he do that if he was just some random person, random crazy Charlie that nobody wanted to be around? You know, you got to ask yourself that. Like, why would that be the thing? And if you do a little bit of digging, I mean, it's not hard to find other people speaking about Charles Manson this way, other people from the Laurel Canyon scene. You know, it's not hard to find. And so this idea that he wasn't liked or wasn't known or wasn't actually part of the crowd is just a lie. And I mean, there's a lot of lies surrounding Laurel Canyon and, you know, all of these different groups and everything, but it just, that one is just really, really fucking irritating to me. So it's just, I don't know. It just always irks me. And I mean, it makes sense why, because if they all know him and, you know, once liked him, then that opens up the doorway to all of this. And why would, you know, they want to do that? But fortunately for us, you know, it's already too late. The door's already open. So, but what I think we're going to do, I think we're going to call it here for today. So I would like to say thank you for tuning in to another episode of Rise to Liberty. Real quick, before we get out of here, head on over to risetoliberty.store. Go check out the merch. I'm working on cleaning up a new design. I'm going to drop a new design coming Monday. So be on the lookout for that. It's going to be super cool. It's almost ready. And yeah, I'll probably do like a promotional sale for a month or a couple of weeks or something. So head on over there, pick up some awesome merch. We've got more awesome stuff coming, even cooler designs than what I already have. Also, head on over to risetoliberty.com/coffee and go support the show. I need all the help I can get. You know, I would like to be able to do this show more and more, but honestly, that requires, you know, getting a little financial help coming from you guys and gals. So do what you can. Also, I mean, running this show, it is a labor of love, but it isn't exactly cheap nor free to run everything. And doing this research, man, it takes a lot. It takes a lot out of you. It's mentally draining, especially at the level I like to do it at. So, you know, buy me a coffee, man. It would help, and it would mean the absolute world. So risetoliberty.com/coffee. Go over, make a one-time donation, monthly reoccurring donation, or you can go to ko-fi.com/risetoliberty and do the same thing. There's options. Okay. And if for whatever reason you don't want to help out financially, I get it. Times are tough. Not everyone has it. But you still want to help out. The best thing you can do, like, share, subscribe, follow, leave a comment, do all of it. Leave a rating. It's free. It takes just a minute. and you wouldn't believe exactly how much that actually helps. So these are definitely ways that you can help out. Other than that, all I got to say is I deeply appreciate all of you tuning in, watching, you know, letting me know what you guys think. I really do like honest opinions. I'm doing this for you guys. I want to make sure that I'm providing you guys with content that you actually want to watch, that you want to listen to. Of course, I have my own ideas, but I don't know. I need to hear from you guys. So let me know in the chat. Is this stuff you like? Do you want me to keep doing what I'm doing? Any recommendations? I mean, it doesn't mean I'm going to take everything, but I want to hear what you guys have to say. Also, did you know about Laurel Canyon? Did you know about any of this? Do you know the story? Have you read the book? Let me know down below. I'd be really interested to know what you guys have to say about this. So since I wasn't able to get yesterday's show out, I did kind of want to wait today to do today's stream for Killdozer Day. So, you know, I thought that was kind of perfect. But what we will be doing, since I didn't really want to cut this short, I will be doing another shorter show tomorrow. I think we'll just keep going with Laurel Canyon, and we will come in and read part 3. So without a doubt, that will happen. I'll actually be setting up the show after we're done here. So it is going to happen. It will happen earlier in the day. So just keep an eye out for that. And I think that's it. So let me... Yeah, Delusional Druid, you missed this one, but go check out the replay. Also, I am streaming tomorrow, much earlier in the day. We're going to be reading part 3 of the Laurel Canyon, Dave McGowan blog. But anyone watching this right now, go check out Delusional Druid over on X or Instagram. We actually have him scheduled to come on for an interview coming up here soon. So keep your eyes out for that. I think it's going to be some killer content. But other than that, I think we're going to get out of here. I'm going to go set up tomorrow's show, so make sure and tune into that. And other than that, right. Disillusion. My bad. Boomer moment. That's another reason I should just end this right here. So gotta go get a little bit more rest. But on that note, thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate it. It truly means the world. And we will get back with you guys tomorrow. And until next time, stay free, my friends.